I hate forecasting personally because I love Cory Doctorow's quote, which says, predicting the future tells people that the future is inevitable.
Right.
Instead, I like to tell stories because stories tell us that the future is up for grabs.
Hello and welcome. Today's guest, Nikola Danaylov, is somebody who's been a huge influence on me over the past 10 or 12 years. He is the host of the incredible Singularity Weblog, which posts videos that he talks to people about a variety of topics that have really helped me to understand the future and indeed the present. And the other way that he's been of incredible influence on my thought is he's hosted for many years, or I don't know if he still does, but he hosted for many years on LinkedIn a daily study group of the book, The Daily Stoic, which has had a huge influence on how I think about events of the day and sort of my own internal dialogue to myself. So welcome, Nicola. Thank you.
My pleasure, Jeremy.
So are we living in the future or what?
Well, as William Gibson said, the future is already here, it's just unequally distributed. So the future's
Right.
always been here. And to mix it with another quote of him again, it just arrives in the wrong order.
Right.
So maybe we're hoping for flying cars and jetpacks, but we're getting, large language models and social media and polarization.
We
So
still we
that's
still
how
got
it
the giant
works.
rockets. We got the giant rockets.
We are getting there. Definitely, we're making huge progress on the giant rockets. There was a period of decades that we didn't.
Mm.
We kind of almost lost completely that entire knowledge. And then came SpaceX, and the rest is history.
And now
Now,
competition for
we
them
have another
too, which is
space race.
amazing.
We have another space race between Elon and Jeff. So, which is good for all of us,
Yeah.
for space in general, for science, for opening, for going and exploring the final frontier. So it's all good. The Chinese are obviously very interested. They have their own international space station. The Indians are making progress. The Russians are super annoyed that, they're not the only ones who can send stuff to the International Space Station anymore. So there's a lot of developments.
Stuff is changing. And so I'm more of a practitioner. I know that your general audience is very much on the philosophical end of things. Where I've been involved in is forecasting and forecasting contests over the last few years. I'm not a particularly good forecaster, but I know a lot of very good forecasters. And with a team of them, we built a bot that's based on multiple LLMs that forecast the future. And that was kind of why I invited you on here. I thought this would be something that you might actually want to play with. I'm gonna actually share my screen, and this is the bot in question. Do you happen to have any questions you want to pose this thing? We can discuss what it does and how good it is or not as it progresses.
Did you predict the DeepSeek breakthrough and the implications for the American stock market?
Um, I mean, it would probably work better for a percentage likelihood of something happening.
Okay.
Um, what is
Prompting
the
is a crucial thing, and each bot has its own flavor of prompting, I
yeah?
guess.
Do you have anything in particular? Let's think of something around DeepSeek.
Yeah. Well,
What's the likelihood that
the question is, the question was whether your bot was able to, because if it's in the prediction business,
yeah, it
then
doesn't
the
it doesn't do
most useful thing would have been for it to predict DeepSeek.
right, black swans. No, it doesn't do that. What it does is if you pose it a question, it finds a likelihood of such a thing happening. which is probably less useful in some respects, but it's probably a good thing in other respects than that it keeps us humans in the loop.
Okay, what's the likelihood that the DeepSeek breakthrough will have long-term implication on NVIDIA's stock value?
Implications for NVIDIA's stock market value. So what this thing does is it first pulls in whatever news it can from the internet, and then it goes through a multi-phase process to try and extract biases and things like that out of it, which is it's a bit chatty, so we'll see a lot of noise on here. And then what it does is it tries to find a sort of a base case scenario for it, which
Mm-hmm.
it passes along to an assemblage or ensemble of different LLMs, which produce their outputs, and then it sort of collates it all into a final percentage likelihood at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as to how good it is, well, LLMs are not quite there in terms of what people can do on this sort of thing. Um, they're I would say that it's probably better than a person who has no knowledge of a particular subject. So it can give you a really good base case for like where to go and do your own research and maybe like you know a starting point for what the prediction is.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Who is the
but
target market for your predictions? Is it investors or what?
No, so this is largely academic.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on a number of papers on different aspects of this,
Mm-hmm.
including AI cognition. So this is one area where we really actually see what LLMs are doing and how it contrasts with what how humans think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've found a number of measures that really kind of show the difference between AI output and human output. So that's one. Number two, competitions. So Metaculus is one particular website that has held an AI competition for the last couple of quarters with prize money. So we've been chasing after that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
initially performed pretty well, but then it fell on its face last quarter, and we're kind of rethinking things. Um, but there are some bots out there which are actually pretty good. So this thing is saying it's saying 47% chance that the thing will that DeepSeek's breakthrough would have some kind of input on stock market prices for NVIDIA going forward, which basically means it's a coin toss, but maybe a little bit on the lower side of that. It's not the most useful output, but what is interesting is that it's saying it's a low confidence kind of thing. So it recognizes the fact that it can't really understand this very well,
Mm-hmm.
and the summary that it produces is usually better than the output. So it's saying that it highlights the superior efficiency and potential market impact, which experienced its drop, the stock drop. So there's immediate market concern. Historical precedents suggest disruptors succeed about 30% of the time, but NVIDIA has a strong market position. So it kind of does a pretty decent role in terms of giving you a summary of what's likely to happen. Um, but whether or not the predictions are actually good is a good question. Well, no, you could say the same thing about people too, really.
And strangely enough, we kind of made the same prediction before we went on the record here that
Yeah,
yeah, it is impactful, but probably not in the long run, and probably just more in the short
right.
run. And even in the short run, it's, as you put it, a storm in a teapot. So it's not as gargantuan as some people are suggesting,
Hmm,
and it's kind of almost to be expected that the market would have these swings every once in a while, which for a long time now it's been just going up. So that,
right.
if
It makes
anything, has
sense.
been very strange.
Yeah, purely from an investment perspective, NVIDIA is a great company, but that doesn't mean that the market is pricing it correctly. Um, What I was gonna, that's the funny thing popped into my head, sort of analogy of a grapefruit. Like there's all of this open source work has happened on LLMs, and you know you can download it freely off of Hugging Face and other sites, and it's sort of like now it's burst open, and the seeds are spreading all over, and we don't really know what will happen next.
Hmm.
You know, where they'll take those seeds will take root and sprout new things. We don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's wonderful because it's open source, and now I'm sure Meta's people are reading it like feverishly, and they're probably in their war room, basically DEFCON 1 or something,
Right.
and they're just like, because basically Meta's AI was Llama was superseded by
Right.
DeepSeek overnight.
It's kind of actually a descendant of Llama. So it's based off of Quen, which, if I understand correctly, is also based off of Llama. And what they've done is they've tweaked the way that this thing works, both in training and in how it does output. And then they've built their own training data set, which I'm guessing is mostly Chinese language. Because it seems to produce better results apparently in Chinese language than in others.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so
There's
they
a lot of
they've
censorship going there too, by the way.
yeah
You ask it about Tiananmen Square and stuff like that. It's
yeah
going to avoid the question. And
yeah. So that's that I would say that. So we have to separate the AI version that's operating through their API. So the commercial version versus the models that they've released and people can download and use themselves.
Mhm.
I would be nervous about anything that touches on their AI on their API. I know a lot of people have been downloading the app onto their phones, and I think that could be a bit of a Trojan horse. It seems dangerous to me.
That's a
But
fantastic point.
yeah, if we separate out the that from the open source stuff that they've published and that people can download and take a look at the code themselves, that seems to be pretty open, but we haven't seen the data set that they use to train the thing, which it's probably going to be petabytes in size. Um, but that data set would probably be somewhat biased just because of the sources that they're using alone, like regardless of anything they've done to tweak it.
Oh, I forget. I was reading somewhere 700 million tokens training. I forget.
It was some huge number. I think it
Uh,
was 14 billion or something like that. It was somewhat larger than the number of tokens used by OpenAI. But again, we have to take them at their word for it on this because we haven't seen the training data.
yeah, yeah. But look, this is kind of like Linux. There's
Yeah,
many flavors of Linux, and many different sort of directions or trajectories or vectors of development for Linux.
right. And there'll be some
So
convergence as well.
yes, definitely there will be overlap and convergence. There will be divergence. So even if this most likely originates from Llama, as its grandpa or grandma or grandparents, by now it would be entirely unique, uh, in the way that it's kind of like programmed and sort of strapped up or bootstrapped or trained and everything. Uh, but if you don't mind, let me zoom out a little bit back here and ask you a couple of questions.
Sure,
Tell
absolutely.
me, share with me a little bit more about what's the kind of context for which you're developing this tool.
Right. There's a number of contexts here. It's going to stop sharing. The initial group that got together was a group of super forecasters, and they pulled me in. I mean, I was just really lucky to be around. They like the fact that I'm a news junkie and that I write as well. But I'm not a particularly good forecaster. So we have this group, and people were chatting, about once a week and daily through email, trying to figure out, what kinds of things can we do to move the world forward. Forecasting is a useful approach towards understanding policy. If you have good forecasts, then you can make good good policy, at least in theory. And maybe that kind of incrementally makes the world better. So we were looking at the kinds of things that we could do, and we sort of played around with just generally posting blogs about the world and where it's going. And then
So is policymakers the target audience?
I think really indirectly, we haven't really figured this one out. We're certainly are mostly speaking internally to the broader forecasting community, but that is a small community. I mean, it's thousands of people in the world, not millions.
Hmm.
And we're certainly are interested in the academic end of it as well. So understanding a little bit better about what's actually producing AI output, like how does it actually operate, and how do you make it better, perhaps? How do you just generally understand it and contrast it with how humans think?
Because, just at the sort of a philosophical level,
Mm,
and I'm kind of going back in time, so my knowledge is not quite up to date. But if I remember, so first of all, at the meta level, even to begin with, I'd like to bring to attention the fact that it's a double-edged sword
yes,
forecasting.
absolutely.
And for example, I hate forecasting personally because I love Cory Doctorow's quote, which says, predicting the future tells people that the future is inevitable.
Right.
Instead, I like to tell stories because stories tell us that the future is up for grabs.
Narrative. There's actually a few things I want to unpick there. Number
Right? So,
one, the first thing is that when we produce forecasts, I think it's really important to assign a probability to them. So I think that kind of gets around it a little bit. But I love the fact that you're talking about from a science fiction aspect, and I think your interview with Schroeder also talks about this a lot.
Carl
Um,
Schroeder, yeah.
yeah, the sort of that narrative thing in science fiction. There's really two main streams in science fiction as well, and I know that when I write, because I write SF short stories, there's the aspect of just pure entertainment, and then there's aspect of it analyzing things that are actually happening in the present, and placing them in a different context to allow people to sort of understand it without bringing in their biases. But I mean, of course, there is a third thread in science fiction, which is, highly disreputable, which is actually trying to predict the future. Um, John Brunner was a prime example of this with some of his novels in the 60s. And
And
that
Asimov's Foundation series, where basically you have this kind of a mathematical
mm,
certainty or inevitability, highly deterministic
mm.
science of the future, where the histological progress is almost kind of determined from the birth of the universe till the end of it.
Yeah, I hate that actually.
Yeah,
The
that drives
notion
me nuts.
it drives me crazy as well. The notion that things are fixed and therefore maybe that we don't have agency in it, or that in some way that we can't influence or change those things. I
Exactly.
really
That's
yeah
the reason why I try to stay away from predictions and always shape them in the form of stories or narratives, even when I do make them, and try to postulate several alternatives usually, uh, and stress the agency that we still have.
yeah
And stepping one step down, if I remember from my studies back in the day, there are two levels of chaos systems. So one is the responsive and one is the non-responsive. So the first system is kind of like the weather. You can make a prediction about the weather, and the weather systems are not responsive to our predictions.
right
In other words, you can get it right or you can get it wrong. It doesn't matter. And in time, our weather forecasting has been getting better and better all the time, so that now we can even make sort of almost by the minute. If you watch Formula One, they have exact
right
predictions about when exactly the rain
per
will
by
start,
minute, yeah, by
which parts
radar.
of the track, yeah, exactly, how much, what kind, at what temperature, and all of that. So we're very good at that because the weather doesn't respond to our immediate predictions.
Right.
However, take the stock market that we mentioned.
Yeah.
If you invent your AI or anyone's AI, let's say, and it's an open source like Llama or DeepSeek, and you start, many people who are investors start asking all these questions about
Reflexivity, right?
exactly, and they start making, and the AI start making those predictions about the future of the stock market or whatever, and NVIDIA's value and costs. Eventually it will be self-defeating because the very nature of us making that prediction on the stock market would influence the kind of price value that we're going to place on our bits for stocks,
Right.
etc. And it's going to influence the stock market, and therefore after a certain kind of point of saturation it will fail to materialize.
And it was yeah, bad forecasting was responsible for some horrible policy failures in the past as well. So you look at like for instance the Bay of Pigs disaster, right? That was entirely based on forecasts that predicted a high chance of success, leading to reckless action, right?
It's kind of like the Iraqi invasion, right?
Yeah,
When George Bush went on the aircraft carrier with mission accomplished flags. And, 10 years later, American soldiers were still dying, and now
right,
they pulled out, and it's a total disaster, much worse than during the time of Saddam.
right.
Iraq is weaker. By the way, Iraq used to be a very secular,
Mm,
one of the most secular countries in the Middle East, actually. And now you have all kinds of
it's
religious
sectarian, right?
fanaticism,
Yeah.
yeah, sectarian violence, etc.
Yeah, I had a thought about this, and that kind of ties in a little bit to why we're doing this, why we're doing this effort with LLMs, which is that humans have ego in their forecasts, no matter how hard we try not to. So if I forecast that something's going to happen at let's say 5% likelihood on day one, and then on day two I'm going to update my forecast, the no matter what's happened, there's still that kind of pull on my ego to like not want to change the forecast because I previously predicted 5%. Whereas with LLMs, they have zero ego whatsoever. That they just purely are in the moment. They don't really even have a consistent model of how the universe functions. So you pose the question to them and they respond. And if the response is completely different from yesterday's to today's, that's just based on what the inputs are.
Yeah, and I'd say we should use them as a compass
Mm,
that gives a general direction or informs of our bearings.
right. As long
But
as
then
we
we should
retain
set the
agency.
destination.
Yeah. I know this is something that in your work has come up a lot and it's had a real influence on me as well, which is just ensuring that humans are in the loop. Um,
Exactly.
retaining our agency to act and not reducing that. Um,
I hope
yeah.
so.
So I wanted to actually talk to you a little bit about AI agents, just given that we have a few more minutes left. It feels like we're in a bit of a moment. People were saying, oh, 2025 is going to be the year of the AI agents. And on the one hand, we've got the sort of flourishing of people building all kinds of things in their basements and playing around with it. And on the other hand, we've got people warning about the potential dangers of this. We're wiring up things in ways that they previously didn't have direct connections to the universe, and now we're giving them that, and potentially we're also taking humans out of the loop in certain things. I don't know if this is something that you've concerns you or that you have particular thoughts on, but I'd be interested to hear from you on that.
Well, not any more or any less than AI in general. I mean, AI agents are just an instantiation of AI,
Right.
and as the general capabilities of AI expand, so would those of the AI agents, which are derived from AI. So there's nothing new there in that sense. It's just more of a specific instantiation.
Mm,
And again, that will be both the poison and the cure. AI agents will be super useful for everything that I can think of, for almost everyone's work, for almost everyone's business, for almost everyone's life.
Mm.
And because they're so enormously useful, they would be equally dangerous.
Yeah, they're going to be pulled into everything no matter what. I mean, like once it starts,
Yes.
it's just nothing that can really stop people from wanting to build more of these things because of the usefulness.
So once you have overwhelmingly powerful technology that's, you know, like that, it comes in a full package.
Mm.
There is no pro without a con. There is no left without right. There is no up without down. That's kind of like universal law of the universe,
Right.
or at the very least a Buddhist law, if you want to call it. They would say there is no end without beginning, and there is no beginning without end.
It's a package deal.
So you get both sides, and there's no good without evil.
Right. I mean, we can rely on standards for interoperability with these things, maybe to some extent, but that doesn't prevent a bad actor or you know a bug which allows something to do stupid things. Um,
Yes, and I'd be shocked if we didn't have some cases of uh, both of those,
yeah, the
both
thought that
accidents and bad actors.
the thought that it came to mind was when these things start talking to each other in order to accomplish tasks. So let's say I go to my accounting agent and I tell it, please prepare my taxes for the year. So it needs to grab my bank account information in order to look at the transcripts. So it talks to the agent for the bank, and there has to be some kind of permissions mechanism to appropriately allow access. But let's say something goes wrong there, and it accidentally wire transfers everything in my account to something else, or it messes up the taxes, or the bank sends the wrong transcripts over to the accountant. It feels like there's going to have to be some sort of A, standards, and B, a
Well, there are
process.
already standards. Like when you
Yeah,
have servers, I was setting up my NAS server about a year ago. It's a Synology. And basically, you have different levels of access. Some are just
right.
simple access to read the data. So in this case, the AI would be able to access the account and read the data. It wouldn't be able to alter it in any case,
Mm,
right? In other cases, you would have an AI that can also edit the data, and in the server in the background, you have certain kind of backups which are unalterable with
right,
a timestamp. So they have, like, whatever period of time you can want to put, like a year, let's say, where they're non-deletable, non-alterable. And
right.
then if there's that period of time that's past due, then to recover the space, you can delete them. But we already have different kind of access rights and edit rights and administrators' rights for basic security, which is kind of common. I mean, I'm using an accounting software myself, which goes to all of my bank accounts and my wife's bank accounts to download all of our data.
Right.
Called YNAB. It's stands for You Need a Budget, and we've had it for maybe 15 years. It's the most useful thing I've ever come across. It's 10 times better than Quicken or Microsoft Money or any kind of accounting software I've ever had before,
Mm,
because it actually teaches you good financial habits.
right. We're using something
So,
similar.
in other words, yes, in other words, the banking and the technology is the content, but the context is how to get in charge of your
Mm.
financial freedom.
The first SF story I ever sold to a pro market was about an AI agent and the mischief that it accidentally got up to. So yeah, it's it certainly seems to be a moment in time.
And as I said, there will be those moments for sure. I'd be shocked if there weren't many of them upcoming. And some of them would be due to accidents or misunderstanding between or miscommunication between different AI agents. And some will be due to malicious actors and deliberate.
Yeah.
And let's just hope that they would not be substantial enough or fundamental enough to undermine the system so that we can learn
Mm.
from them quick enough to be able to counter them. And as many have pointed out, if you have AI agents that could be the problem, you would have AI agents that will be the solution.
Right.
I mean,
A
NVIDIA
security
CEO
agent,
already
yeah.
said they cannot design any of their last two generations of chips without their own AI agents, which they've had now
Right.
for years.
Yeah,
And
that's
his
pretty
dream
amazing.
was, yes, his dream was having 50,000 physical employees and 50 million, AI agent
Virtual
employees.
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty amazing future that. And it provides space for people as well.
That's to be seen exactly where, how, that's all. We're working that out
Yeah.
as we speak.
As it goes along, yeah.
Yeah. So how we're going to cohabitate with these agents peacefully between humanity and agents, between different humans, because the problem is not humanity and agents. The problem is different humans have very contradictory
Right.
goals, and they will have their own agents, and then they might be able to set most
Right. A
likely their
conflict between
agents.
them. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, even this applies even if we do not have something like AGI. I mean, even a completely non-intelligent, non-sentient LLM programmed or configured in a way that is potentially dangerous could cause a tremendous amount of harm, particularly as it gets wired into the internet.
absolutely. It's as we said, as I said, the more powerful our technology become to do good, the more powerful they will be and more dangerous to do evil.
Right,
It's the part of the package. There is no fire without burning something,
right, and you get
whether
to cook
intentionally or by accident.
you get to cook your food and have a nice steak or whatever it is, but yeah, you get the downside as well.
Well, speaking of the nice steak, I've been vegan for 8 years now, almost nine, 8.5 years. And one of the reasons I went vegan was because of AI.
Really? How does
And the
tell me
reason
more?
is because, well, think about it. We are currently the smartest species on our planet.
Right,
And as a result of that, we kill 75 billion animals
right.
and 1.2 trillion aquatic organisms every year.
Every year, yeah.
Every year. So 75 billion animals and 1.2 trillion aquatic organisms. Now, our justification is basically one of power and intelligence. Might makes right. We are smarter than you,
Right,
and therefore we can enslave you by the billions
right.
in sort of Auschwitz-like
So
conditions. We
so lead
can
by example, basically.
exactly, yeah. So we can kill you for food, for fun, for sports, or we can just lock you up, in zoos or whatever. And the argument is that if we're following this kind of logic
Right.
and we meet a higher intelligence than us, whether alien intelligence from space or
Or
whether
AGI.
artificial intelligence that arises here on our planet, in either case, if they embrace the same principle of treating lower intelligences the way we do,
Right.
then we're doomed.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, obviously there is no any binding uh, enforcement or anything like that, but at least we can have a precedent or many precedents, hopefully, of
Mm.
higher intelligence treating lower intelligences with dignity and respect
And
in
empathy.
the hope that we would be treated the same way.
Right. This is food for thought, if you excuse the pun. Um, I certainly have a great deal of empathy with that viewpoint. Um, so Nicola, thank you so much for coming on. Um, in the interest of your time, where can people find you on the internet? I'll drop links below.
Well, you can go to singularity.info, which is going to take you straight to my blog, or you can go to singularity.fm, which will take you straight to my podcast.
Which for people really you should listen to this. There's a lot more and much deeper of Nicola's thoughts on there, and if you're not listening to that or watching, you really should be. So thank you so much for coming on. I deeply appreciate it, and
My
uh,
pleasure, Jeremy.
and till next time.
All the best and good luck with your bot. It looks like it's pulling data from a number of resources now, so that's pretty impressive. And it's kind of, in a way, preceding those agents. It's in a way acting as an agent, AI agent,
It's a
which
kind of
pulls,
agent, yeah.
yeah, data from a variety of resources I saw, and then it merges it and it assesses and it gives a value weighing each of those, and then comes up with a final sort of bottom line. So
And
good
and
luck
it,
with
it
that.
can submit it to contests as well automatically. So
Yes. Well, congratulations and good luck.
thank you very much.
All the best. Bye bye.